Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the Pramāṇa Paddhati to investigate what is honestly the ultimate philosophical cold case. How do we actually know what is real? And maybe more importantly, how does the universe even stick together? We're going to unpack some ancient, incredibly rigorous logic that will completely change how you look at something as simple as a white shirt and how your mind processes the entire world around you. Let's get right into it.
Here is our roadmap for today's investigation. We'll be hitting the tools of truth, the ultimate inner witness, rejecting the invisible glue, vishesha, or self-linking power, the true result, and finally, moving from logic to liberation.
Starting off with Section 1, the tools of truth. Really, how do we actually know anything?
So, to know anything for sure, you have to have a standard, right? The text defines our primary tool, pramāṇa, as an instrument that immediately and invariably produces valid knowledge. That word invariably is absolutely crucial here. It completely rules out accidental or lucky guesses. Like if you'd guess that it's raining outside without actually looking and you just happen to be right, yeah, you didn't possess knowledge of the rain, you just got lucky. Pramāṇa is all about having a valid, flawless method.
Now what's super fascinating is how the Dvaita philosophical system strictly limits these valid instruments to just three fundamental types. First, Pratyaksha, or direct perception, which proves the world around us is real. Second is Anumana, logical inference, which proves the universe actually has an underlying logical structure. And third, Agama, or scripture, which reveals the truths we simply cannot see or logic out on our own. Basically, everything you know comes through one of these three avenues.
Let's zoom in on perception for a second. Direct perception proves the world is real, sure, but to be flawless, it has to dodge these 7 specific glitches, known as doshas. I mean, our instruments are physical, which means they're naturally prone to error. If a bird is way too far away, it just looks like a dot. If you press a book literally right against your eyeball, it's way too close to read. We can't see bacteria because they're too small, or a single drop of water once it merges into a whole lake. And we all know the classic error of similarity, thinking a coiled rope in the dark is actually a snake. The takeaway here is that the world isn't an illusion. Our physical instruments just have these specific glitches. Fix the glitch and you see reality.
But since those physical senses can obviously fail us, let's move to Section 2, the ultimate inner witness.
Enter the Sakshi. This is just a brilliant concept. The Sakshi is the unfailing inner witness. It's literally the intuitive faculty of the soul itself. So while your physical eyes might totally mistake that rope for a snake, your Sakshi is operating on a much deeper level. It records your internal experiences, your profound sense of happiness, deep misery, your innate awareness of time passing, or even your spatial sense of direction. And here's the kicker. Knowledge grasped directly by the Sakshi is inherently valid. Once it's fully realized, it absolutely cannot be doubted. It's the bedrock of your conscious experience. Working right alongside those external senses and the soul's Sakshi is the mind, or manas. And the mind isn't just a background helper. It acts as an independent coordinator. It's the engine of your memory. Plus, it oversees the external senses, and it actually catches when a physical sense is flawed. Say you have jaundice. Your physical eyes might literally perceive a white lotus flower as yellow. It's your internal mind that steps in, coordinates the data, and goes, wait a minute, that lotus isn't yellow. My eyes are just compromised by illness right now. Which brings us to Section 3, rejecting the invisible glue, also known as the Samavaya trap.
I want you to ask yourself this fundamental question, one that ancient philosophers fiercely debated. When you look at a piece of white cloth, what exactly is holding the color white to the physical cloth? How do an object and its attribute actually connect?
This perfectly illustrates a major philosophical clash. The Nyaya school argues that a separate invisible glue, which they call samavaya, is required to connect a quality, like the color white, to an object, like the cloth. But the Dvaita school, championed by Sri Jayatirtha, completely rejects this, and they base this strictly on observation. Look, we only ever perceive two realities, the cloth and its color. We never ever perceive a third, distinct entity acting as some mysterious glue.
And here is where it builds into a devastating logical flaw called infinite regress, or anavasta. If you accept this invisible glue idea, logic absolutely traps you. Think about it. Step 1. You have a glue connecting the color white to the cloth. But hold on, because the Nyaya school defines that glue as a totally separate independent entity, well, it needs to be attached too. So in step 2, you need a new second piece of glue to connect the first glue to the cloth.
Which means in step 3, you need a third glue to connect the second. You see where this is going. It cascades forever into a complete logical nightmare. Because of this endless chain of required connectors, the entire concept of samavaya completely falls apart.
To escape this logical trap, we move to section 4, Vishesha, the self-linking power.
The incredibly elegant solution here is Vishesha, which translates to unique particularity. Instead of inventing invisible glues, this philosophy just observes that objects possess an inherent ontological power to distinguish themselves and their attributes. A white cloth doesn't need glue to hold on to its whiteness. The power of Vishesha means it is self-linking by its very nature. It completely avoids the infinite regress fallacy because it just removes the need for a connector altogether. It's a remarkably clean, solid logical fix.
All right, section 5, the true result. What actually happens right after we perceive an object?
Now, some opposing schools claim that perception directly causes an action. But let's look at this sequence. Moment 1, you see a thorn. That's direct perception. Moment 2, your mind retrieves a memory that thorns cause pain. Moment 3, you use logical inference to decide to step around it. The actual action of avoiding the thorn is the result of memory and inference, not the initial perception itself. Seeing the thorn didn't make you move, it just delivered the data that the thorn was there.
Therefore, the final verdict of the Pramāṇa Paddhati on this is that the true sole result of flawless perception is simply pramiti, correct comprehension. The only direct job of your senses is to comprehend the object exactly as it is, without any immediate physical action attached to it. Action is just a secondary step driven by logic and memory. Perception just delivers the pristine data, period.
Finally, section 6, from logic to liberation. Why go through all this rigorous logical investigation in the first place? What's the ultimate motive?
The text reminds us that while we've been deep in the weeds of strict logical philosophy, the ultimate objective here is profoundly spiritual. By mastering these valid means of knowledge, the seeker learns to first discriminate, really telling the difference between the temporary material world and the eternal reality. Having that clear sight allows them to detach, developing a real dispassion for worldly illusions. And once freed from that illusion, they can devote themselves wholly, listening and reflecting on the divine. Ultimately, through this disciplined pursuit of truth, they attain moksha, eternal liberation and natural bliss, granted through divine grace. So logic? It's really just the ladder to liberation.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this thought. We've seen just how easily our physical senses can be fooled by distance, or similarity, or missing the obvious. And we've seen how easy it is to fall into logical traps like that invisible glue. So are you actively fixing the logical glitches in your own perception? And honestly, more importantly, are you tuning out the noise to listen to your sakshi, that unfailing inner witness, to finally grasp what is truly real? Keep questioning, keep learning, and as always, trust your inner witness.